DFS community. Welcome into week 2 edition of one of the most accurate DFS shows in the industry. This is the Adjusted Line Play Report, where we take a deep dive into the play in the trenches to determine game script and player outcomes. This show is presented by Zilla Fantasy Elite. I am your host, Todd Hoffman. You can find myself over on Twitter at Todzilla1337, and you can find Zilla Fantasy Elite over on Twitter at Zilla Fantasy. Today's show is powered by Rain Total Body Fuel. Looking to make it rain some cash in DFS? Tune in to the Adjusted Line Play Report from Zilla Fantasy Elite and follow host Todd Hoffman while he delivers the most accurate DFS advice in the industry in Make It Rain. All right, today's flavor is Orange Dreamsicle. Week 2, we want to dream of those DFS victories or those victories within your fantasy football lineups. There we go. All right, folks. Week 2 underway. Got my little Scott Fishbowl hat. It actually is messing with the green screen. You can see right through it. It's supposed to be the Monster logo on there. I got my Underdog shirt. So Scott Fishbowl 13 hat. We are ready to roll for week 2. First week of DFS for season 2023. So let's get this kicked off, folks. All right. First thing we're going to look at, if you're new, this is the Adjusted Line Play Report. We're looking at offensive line and defensive line play metrics, pulling these values, pitting what their ranks are against each other. So as you can see up here, offensive pass protection versus the defensive pass rush, what those ranks are. We look at this, it's highly correlative to how the football games come out. You know, obviously it's not 100% accurate, but does very good. This is all using week 1 data. As the season progresses, this stuff gets a little bit more accurate. So for anybody who's new to the show, that's kind of how it works. Looking at offensive and defensive line play, we always hear that the game is won and lost in the trenches. And this is exactly what the report is doing, is looking at the play in the trenches. So if it's won and lost in the trenches, why is no one looking at the trenches in terms of fantasy? That's what we aim to do here with the Adjusted Line Play Report every single week. If you haven't, hit that subscribe button on the YouTube. Go over to Twitter. Follow me at Todzilla1337 or the account for Zilla Fantasy Elite at Zilla Fantasy on Twitter. All right, with that being said, let's get underway. We're going to go from highest game total for the week all the way down to the lowest one on the main slate, and then we'll get into the island games. This week we have 1 Sunday night football game and 2 Monday night football games, so we'll look at those after we do the main slate. So, main slate, weekly game total rank number 1 is Kansas City at Jacksonville. We've got a 3.5 Vegas line there, so Kansas City 3.5 point road favorites. Kansas City 27.25 team implied total. Jacksonville 23.75 team implied total. For a Vegas game total overall of 51, again number 1 on the slate. Adding in a little bit something new here for the visuals, Kansas City is the number 2 team on the slate. Jacksonville is actually number 5 team on the slate. So should be a pretty high scoring affair. One of the only high scoring affairs in this entire matchup. There's a lot of them sitting right at 40 or less in this week. So you're going to want to get these higher scoring ones for your DFS lineups. Anyway, as always, we go with the away team. Kansas City, number 4 in offensive pass protection and number 10 in the offensive run blocking. So almost green across the board there. And then looking at Jacksonville, 14th in the pass rush and 29th at stopping the run. Just looking at these, we should see Kansas City with some time to pass the ball, which is always going to be good. A lot of times when I say there's a lot of time to pass the ball, if somebody's got a deep threat, such as Marquez Valdez-Scantling, you should see a few extra targets to that person as these plays are allowed to develop in the game. So don't be surprised if you see MVS in this particular matchup with a long bomb of some sort, especially if this is going to be a high-scoring affair. I do like his chances of seeing some of those. Justin Watson would be the other one who last year saw a lot of opportunities like that, deep shots, and he was out on the field quite a bit in week 1 against the Lions. So keep that in mind. DVOA metrics for the pass, number 6 and number 8 for Jacksonville. DVOA more indicative of, you can kind of think of how many fantasy points per opportunity that they're scoring in the pass game if you want. So they're just more efficient in the pass there. So number 6 and number 8. But offensive line, real play goes off of these. And the run blocking for Kansas City, number 10, Jacksonville 29th. This looks really good also for Kansas City's run game. Pacheco is the main contributor there for the Kansas City Chiefs in the run game. Wouldn't be surprised at all if he has a pretty solid week. I don't think he's going to, blow the ceiling off, but getting 12 or 15 rushes for 80 to 100 yards, not out of the question. Whether or not he gets into the end zone remains the question, but I wouldn't be too surprised to see him with a pretty solid rush yards per attempt in this particular game. Would lean Kansas City towards this 28-point total. Based off of this, they should be able to run the ball very effectively. They should be able to have plenty of time to pass the ball, which is good for Kelsey, especially if his knee is not quite right. But I do like Justin Watson and Marquez Valdez-Scantling in this to have those potential for deep shots in this particular matchup. Now getting into Jacksonville, number 12 in offensive pass protection to Kansas City's 26th. The pass DVOA for Jacksonville 11, Kansas City 28. Very good matchup there for Jacksonville. Getting into the run blocking, Jacksonville is actually number 1 overall in offensive run blocking. Kansas City number 29 in stopping the run. Getting into the DVOA side, number 12 for Jacksonville, number 28 for Kansas City's defense. Again, Kansas City's red across the board there, which is kind of surprising considering that Detroit-Kansas City game was kind of a dud on the season opener there, 20-21, whatever the score was. But seeing Kansas City across the board red should mean that Jacksonville will have plenty of time to pass the ball. I know Kansas City did not have Jones there with that first game. That could certainly make a big difference in this game and how much time they have to pass. But in theory, a pretty big gap there. Jacksonville should be fine in the pass protection. That might boost it up to even with Chris Jones coming in. But regardless, the pass game should be fine, if not having a little bit of time to pass the ball, which is going to be good for their pass game. The run game, number 1 versus number 29, that's a huge gap. Even the DVOA on both ends is a big gap. So I think Jacksonville also will be able to move the ball pretty effectively in this particular matchup, which lends itself to being a high-scoring affair. That 51-point total, I think, is well justified. I don't know what the weather is going to be like in Jacksonville, but it's usually pretty nice down there. Sometimes it get a little hot and humid. People get cramps, things like that, which would make me a little bit nervous for Kelsey maybe not having worked out for over a week here with his knee injury. Could cause some cramping issues. Just keep that in mind if you're looking to play some players in this game. I do think this can end up being a pretty high-scoring affair. I think Jacksonville will be able to move the ball. It is a 3.5-point Vegas line there, and I don't know. This is making me... I'm doing it. I'm going to hit the purge siren. I think this is an upset alert. Jacksonville, 3.5-point home underdogs. I think just with the way things are lining up here, I think Jacksonville is going to be able to move the ball pretty effectively. Kansas City should be able to as well. I just see these DVOA for Jacksonville's defense at green. Kansas City's DVOA not super great. So, they might struggle a little bit additionally to move the ball compared to Jacksonville here, who I think is going to be green light across the board. Not that I don't think Kansas City is going to be able to move the ball. They should move the ball well, but I just think Jacksonville is going to hang in there. I would not be shocked here to see Jacksonville, squeak one out like a 28-27, 30-28, 30-27, something like that. I do expect it to hit the over, just with people being able to score here. But Kansas City looked a little rough in that first week. They don't have Eric Bieniemy anymore for coordinator. Not sure how much that makes a difference or not, but gonna shake some rust off. If they get Kelsey back, they should be able to move the ball a little bit more effectively than they did in week 1. I like the game. It's just a matter of getting those players. So Jacksonville's pass game, let's get into some of those. The run game, we did see Tank Bigsby with some errors. I'd be a little bit nervous about playing him in the sort of cash game, obviously, but tournaments, I'd probably avoid that. I'm not sure what that's going to look like for him in terms of playing time in week 2 with the mental errors that he had in week 1, but that remains to be seen. Travis Etienne was very good in week 1. He should be very good in week 2. I don't mind him as a play. And then getting into the pass protection side. So with time to throw, Calvin Ridley should be plenty fine. Wouldn't be surprised to see him with another high yardage game. The big thing was Christian Kirk last week. Had kind of a dud game while Zay Jones picked up the slack. I do like Zay Jones this week, especially if Jacksonville's going to be able to move the ball. Wouldn't be shocked to see Zay Jones with 6 or 7 receptions in this game, close to 80 to 100 yards and a touchdown. I don't think Jacksonville really has a red zone threat outside of maybe Evan Ingram. But Calvin Ridley does get open despite his little bit smaller size, so he's always been kind of a touchdown scorer. But yeah, wouldn't be surprised to see either Zay Jones or Calvin Ridley with a touchdown here in this game. Do like Trevor Lawrence, obviously. Travis Etienne certainly can catch the ball. Bigsby was a good ball catcher in college, and they could certainly take a dump off into the end zone as well. So keep that in mind. Just an interesting game. This is going to be one where you probably won't want players of, because I think it's going to be super high scoring to the rest of them, compared to the rest of them. So just an interesting one here. Let's get into the number 2 rank on the slate, which is Las Vegas at Buffalo. 47-point Vegas game total there. We already see we're dropping down 4 points here. Number 2 on the slate. So we have Buffalo as 8-point home favorites. 27.5 team implied total to Vegas's 19.5. Buffalo number 1 scoring team on the week as of Saturday morning. Vegas number 17 there. Getting into the away side, Las Vegas pass protection number 5 and number 4 in the pass protection and DVOA. Buffalo number 26 and number 11. Should be pretty good there for Las Vegas's pass protection in this particular case. Getting into the run blocking, Vegas 18, Buffalo 23. And then the DVOA, Vegas 29 and 14. Don't expect Vegas to be able to run the ball as effectively as they should be able to pass the ball. We did see Jacoby Myers and Devontae Adams do just fine last week in their particular matchups. So keep an eye out for that. I think if Vegas is going to be moving the ball, they're going to be doing it through the air. It does sound like Jacoby Myers is in the concussion protocol, which would make me a little bit more nervous for him, especially if he's cleared to play, he should be fine, but just keep that in mind if you're trying to set your individual lineups or, put him into DFS. He might be a late scratch there, depending on if he clears or not. As of Saturday, I don't think I had heard that he's cleared. So, but if Vegas is going to move it, it's going to be the air. If Jacoby Myers is out, Devontae Adams would probably be in a smash spot, considering Buffalo is huge favorites here. They're probably going to be down. They're probably going to need to pass here, and you could see Devontae Adams with one of those 14 to 18 target days. Certainly well within his range to catch over 10 balls and 100 yards in this. So very good for a DK DraftKings matchup. Getting into the run blocking side, especially if Jacoby Myers is out, Las Vegas might be able to throw some of those dump offs to the running backs a little bit more. Hunter Renfrow might get a little bit more involved too if Jacoby Myers is out. Those would probably be the biggest beneficiaries, laying a little bit more on Josh Jacobs in the pass game, as well as probably a little bit more rush attempts to him. Should Jakobi Meyers be out, you might see him with a higher workload. Getting into that Buffalo side, so number 1 scoring team on this slate. They are number 6 in offensive pass protection. Vegas 20th in the pass rush. 14 and 26 there for Buffalo and Vegas in the pass DVOA. This is signaling Buffalo should have plenty of time to pass the ball. Steph Diggs should be plenty fine here. Gabe Davis might be a big beneficiary of the additional time. He's been weirdly used as a deep threat despite not being super fast as a receiver. But he could benefit from that additional time where he can get open there. Buffalo's run game also looks very good. Number 14 in run blocking versus 31 for Vegas. And then the DVOA, 18 and 23. I would expect Buffalo to be able to run the ball very effectively as well. James Cook, we saw with a high percentage of the snaps for the running backs there in week 1. Should expect that to continue here. I think he's also in play for this particular matchup. Buffalo should be able to move the ball really effectively, as I said. Vegas, I don't think as effectively. I think Buffalo is going to be leading in this, which could lead to a lot of Vegas pass attempts, which is why I say Devontae Adams could be a very good play this week, especially if Jakobi Meyers is out. He could, definitely see those double-digit receptions and, upwards of 15 to 18 targets in this particular matchup if Meyers is out. But that's a particular matchup. As you see, some of these things have some NAs and blanks for the pace of play. We're not going to get into that until a few weeks in when all of these kind of get numbers in there. But the time leading ranks and all of these aren't in there. Just to take a side note, the Football Outsiders, where I used to get my information from, did go out of business and their website stopped as of September 1st, so 2 weeks ago. I can't find the game time trailing, game time leading, and game time tied. As of right now, I'll put that in there whenever I can find it, but as of right now, we're not going to have that. It wasn't a huge part of this report anyway, but let's keep an eye out for that. So let's get into, there's another game that's number 2 for this 47-point game total. That's Seattle at Detroit. So we'll go up here and get a look at them. This is a 4.5-point Detroit favorite. So Seattle going into Detroit as 4.5-point underdogs. 47 game total there from Vegas, number 2 on the slate. Detroit, 25.75 team implied total, good for 4th overall. Seattle, 21.25 team implied total, 13th overall. Getting into that Seattle offensive pass protection, number 15. Detroit pass rush, number 7. The pass DVOA, number 13. Detroit's pass DVOA on defense is 27. The DVOA is suggestive that Seattle might be pretty effective or pretty efficient in the air if they can get those passes off. But the other aspect is Detroit's green there in the pass rush. It's not a huge gap, but we did see Seattle's offensive line really struggle. It sounds like they're dealing with a lot of injuries there. In Hudson from Detroit seems like a stud. I could see him getting into the backfield and getting quite a few sacks in this. Especially, I don't know how accurate this number 15 is for Seattle, but anyway, that's the story in terms of that. It is an adjusted line play, so if Seattle is sitting in 2nd and 20 or 3rd and 20 and they get sacked, it's not going to ding them as much as if it's like a 1st and 5 when you'd expect a run. They actually do a pass play and they get sacked. That's going to ding them a little bit more in their offensive pass protection than, a sack on 3rd and 30 would. That's an expected pass down situation, expected situation where the quarterback's going to be holding onto the ball, trying to get that first down. More likely to get sacked than you would be on a 1st and 5. Anyway, I think that's part of why they're at a 15 this week. Getting into the run blocking for Seattle, number 5, Detroit, number 4 in stopping the run, and then those DVOAs, 11 for Seattle, Detroit 13. Really what this is suggesting for me is that Seattle's probably going to struggle to move the ball against Detroit. Certainly in the pass game, they might be efficient once they do catch the ball in terms of scoring touchdowns or gaining yards, but I don't know how much time they're going to have. This is kind of suggestive that they won't have a ton of time, which is going to lead probably to a few more quicker passes needed. I don't know if that benefits Jackson Smith and Jigba or Tyler Lockett in the pass game. I don't think it's necessarily DK Metcalf week this week. I would more lean towards that, or a Noah Fant week, or the running backs getting some additional targets thrown their way, especially if Geno's under pressure. And then the run blocking side, that looks like the better of the two matchups, so I'd expect Seattle to try to run the ball a little bit more, combined with maybe being under pressure for a little bit in this game. I think those running backs are going to be the ones that you want to target in Seattle. And we didn't see Charbonnet really get too involved last week. It was pretty much the Kenneth Walker show. So if I'm going to grab a Seattle piece on here, it's probably going to be either Jackson Smith and Jigba or Tyler Lockett or Kenneth Walker. And then I'm going to be avoiding DK Metcalf and probably just Geno Smith in general. Getting into the Detroit side, they are number 29 in offensive pass protection. Fortunately for them, Seattle's defensive pass rush is dead last at number 32. The pass DVOA for Detroit, very excellent there at number 5. The defensive pass DVOA for Seattle, number 31, so second from the worst there. Detroit should have time to pass the ball, and it looks like here when they do, they should be pretty efficient with the ball when they're moving it. Don't expect them to be under a ton of pressure based on these numbers. Not that number 29 is good, but to kind of cancel out should just be a standard day there in the pocket for Jared Goff, which is going to be good for Amon-Ra St. Brown. Not too much time, but not so little that you have to worry about it necessarily. So Amon-Ra St. Brown, Sam Laporta, probably your best options there in the pass game. Getting into the run blocking, Detroit number 23, so pretty poor there. Seattle number 2 in the defensive run stopping. They did play the Los Angeles Rams last week, so that could be skewed a little bit by this one game sample size, but they did do a very effective job against the Rams. Detroit's run DVOA on offense number 5, Seattle's 20. Again, the DVOA more indicative of kind of like a fantasy points per opportunity than anything else. I'm going to assume Detroit's going to struggle a little bit with their run blocking in this, which might be causing this game to kind of hit the under if you think about it. Like, no one's got a really plus matchup here on offense. I don't think Seattle is going to move the ball very effectively. Looking at Detroit, they should be fine in the pass game, but it's going to be more than likely a dink and dunk with Sam Laporta and Amon-Ra St. Brown. And then the run blocking looks like it's heavily in the favor of Seattle's defense. Campbell there, the coach for Detroit, seems like he's one that just wants to kind of control the clock and go that route. And if Detroit's kind of trying to ram the ball down Seattle's throat, I don't see them being super effective in that this week. I do like the under for this, so it's a 47 Vegas game total, tied for number 2 on the slate. I just think both of these teams are going to struggle a little bit, despite what historically has happened, where these two, I think even last year met, and it was like a 60-point game overall. This one shaping out to be a little bit of a dud in terms of that. And it might be pretty popular, just based off of historical trends. It might be super popular. You got a bunch of big names in there. Amon-Ra St. Brown, all 3 Seattle receivers, Kenneth Walker, Geno Smith here and there, get in there. So could be a popular game. It's just one that I'm probably going to avoid, especially if it's going to be popular, because it doesn't look like it's shaping out to be a super effective game for fantasy points. But your studs, you're probably going to start them in your regular seasonal long leagues. Just probably want to avoid a lot of this in your DFS lineups. Getting into the number 4 game on the slate, Baltimore and Cincinnati. Another Sunday early game here. We have Cincinnati as 3-point home favorites, so really, Vegas line gives you the standard home 3-point favorite. Nothing has changed down there, so they're saying this is roughly an even matchup. Cincinnati's got that 3-point bump there for being a home team. 46.5 Vegas game total, so just a half point below those number 2 games for the fourth highest on the slate. Cincinnati 24.75 team implied points, good for 5th best on the slate or on the main slate. And Baltimore 21.75, good for 9th on the slate, on that main slate. Getting into the Baltimore side, number 32 in offensive pass protection, dead last there. Cincinnati number 12 in the pass rush. This is suggesting that you should see Lamar Jackson under duress in the pass game. Cincinnati number 12 in the defensive DVOA. Baltimore 20th in their pass protection DVOA, or their pass DVOA. Again, indicative that I think Cincinnati is going to be able to get after Lamar Jackson. That's going to lead to what would amount to quicker throws. We did see Zay Jones last week, very effective, lots of targets, but he had a very low ADOT. I think it was below 5 in that particular game. May have been even like in the 3s. I can't remember off the top of my head, but he would be a big beneficiary there. If Lamar is under pressure, his ADOT's super low. He's, they call him joystick, which is a pretty common name there for guys that are twitchy and able to dance around. So I think he could be in line for a lot of targets there. Same with Mark Andrews. If it sounded like he practiced in full on Friday, so he should be able to play in this particular game with a quad injury. A little bit of a concern there for re-aggravation during this game, but if Cincinnati's going to be getting after Lamar is going to have a few more rush attempts in terms of just scrambling on those pass plays. So I would expect that to be fine. And then Zay Jones and Mark Andrews would probably be the biggest beneficiaries of needing to get the ball out quick. Bateman and Odell Beckham, I would pretty much fade in this based off of this information. Getting into the run blocking for Baltimore, number 26, Cincinnati 20th. And then getting into the run DVOA, Baltimore 9th, Cincinnati 30th. Just looking at the DVOA, it's a plus matchup for Baltimore, so they might be able to get some decent fantasy points there. But looking at the just raw run blocking and run stopping numbers, Baltimore might struggle a little bit in that run department. I know both Gus Edwards and Justice Hill were very popular waiver wire things for redraft. I would be a little bit hesitant in this game to trot them out there. The good thing is, as I said, Baltimore might be under pressure, which could lead to a few more dump-offs to those running backs. Justice Hill does profile a little bit better of a pass-catching back than Gus Edwards, but they might see a few additional targets. I just don't see them being super effective on the ground against Cincinnati based off of this information. In general, it looks like Baltimore might struggle to move the ball, but Lamar, certainly a dynamic player. If he's under pressure, scrambling, he could certainly rip off some interesting long runs there. And if you're playing on something like DraftKings where they give you the 100 or the bonus for 100 rushing yards, I don't mind Lamar Jackson over there. I could see him getting 100 yards in this, just with them not being able to move the ball super effectively. If Cincinnati's doing their thing, or if it's close, he's going to have a lot of opportunities probably to drop back, get those scrambles, and gain 8 to 15, 20 yards on some of these runs that he's capable of doing. I think they're going to struggle in general, but the one player, Lamar, should be fine. And then I'd be leaning towards the Zay Flowers, Mark Andrews route if they're going to be under pressure as well. Cincinnati side, number 14 in the offensive pass protection. Baltimore, number 9 in the offensive pass rush. This is indicative that Cincinnati shouldn't be under huge duress, but they're probably not going to have a ton of time to pass the ball. Tyler Boyd in this particular matchup might be pretty good. We might see a lot more dump-offs to the running backs as well. Tight ends usually get involved in this, so I'm not sure. I didn't look at what Cincinnati look like in terms of their tight end pass protection. Actually, I'm going to go over to Fantasy Life. They have very, very good tools over there. They're all free. let's go see what Cincinnati's tight end situation was in terms of route run and things like that. And I'll pop it up on the screen for you here when I find it. All right, you should see fantasylife.com up here on the screen. Matthew Berry's child that he birthed onto the internet for all of our fantasy goodness after he left ESPN. He created this. I just want to point out they have a ton of tools up here. Everything's free. Certainly go and check it out. But the thing I was looking for here is the snaps report. So you can go there, stats, info, snaps. And then we want to look at what happened with the Cincinnati Bengals. It's 2023. We want to look at the tight ends, who was running routes. Whew. All right. Cincinnati Bengals. Irv Smith, we got 30 snaps. Mitchell Wilcox, 7. So Irv Smith was the one that was out there doing that. So we see he's got 30 snaps to Mitchell Wilcox, 7. The other thing, you can go in utilization report, game log. You can go over there, go to Cincinnati Bengals. We want the tight end. And it's going to tell you, hey, Irv Smith was in there on 71% of the routes. Drew Sample, not sure why he wasn't listed in the snaps, but he was out there for 15% of the routes. Mitchell Wilcox, 7. Targets per route run, Irv Smith, 21. That's actually very good as a tight end, so keep that in mind if Cincinnati isn't going to have as much time to throw. Irv Smith could be a big beneficiary there. Very cheap tight end, I'm certain of it, on those DFS sites. I haven't looked at the pricing as of yet, but him and Tyler Boyd could be ones that you'll want to check out in this particular matchup. Anyway, that's Fantasy Life. Very good tools there. They're all free, no paywalls. That's kind of how Matthew Berry wants it, and that's the way it's delivered. So, Cincinnati pass game should be covered there. Cincinnati run game, number 21. Baltimore 17 at stopping the run. Very even. Typically in those very even matchups like that, the studs will do well, and the people who aren't as good at football will not do as well. So what is Joe Mixon at this point in his career? Certainly think he was a stud coming in. He's getting a little long in the tooth in terms of running backs are concerned. We haven't seen him be super effective here for probably a little over a year. So what does that think? I don't know. But it should be an okay matchup in terms of pretty even there. So wouldn't expect Mixon to have a huge efficient game, but he certainly could. If Cincinnati's getting to the goal line and struggling to move the ball, they might just lean on him to score those touchdowns as they get in. But yeah, I think both of these offenses are going to struggle a little bit moving the ball, just based off of what this looks like. I think this could hit the under. Don't know what the weather is supposed to be like, but I wouldn't be surprised to see like a 17-20 game here, or 24-17, something like that. Fairly low scoring. A lot of times these AFC North matchups are bloodbaths, and just knock them out, drag them out type affairs. So keep that in mind. We'll get to the number 5 game on the slate, which is the Chargers in Tennessee. Scroll on down to that game. This one gets a little interesting because we've got some injury news, but we should see these lines maybe adjust a little bit. We have the Chargers 2.5-point road favorites going into Tennessee. So 24 team implied total for the Chargers, 6th best on the slate. Tennessee 21.5 points for their team implied total, 11th best on the slate. That game is at 45.5 and the 5th best on the slate as a game total. Getting into the Chargers side, offensive pass protection number 28, Tennessee number 16 in the pass rush. The DVOA numbers are almost flipped, so pass DVOA for the Chargers 10th, and the pass DVOA for Tennessee 23rd. Chargers might not have a ton of time to pass the ball based off of the pass protection there. I know they kind of struggled with that a little bit in week 1. Playing Miami. A lot of opportunities to get sacked there in a high-scoring affair. I don't know if they're going to have a issue there in the pass protection. I don't think Tennessee's that good of a team, but their defense certainly does look pretty good. Getting into the run blocking side, though, that's where it gets very interesting. So we got the Chargers there, number 1 in run blocking, number 1 in run DVOA. Tennessee, number 3 in stopping the run and number 2 in the defensive run DVOA. Tennessee, historically, the last several years has been really good at stopping the run. It's really strange. In the preseason, we saw them be super bad. Their defense just looked like it's going to get blown out of the water from the preseason games, just allowing tons and tons of points. Didn't really come to fruition there in that first matchup, which was kind of interesting. They come in here, still good at the run. But the Chargers, number 1, they really laid the wood to Miami in that first game. They come in number 1. Austin Eckler, doubtful for week 2, which is interesting. Just heard some reports this morning that it doesn't sound like he's planning on traveling with the team to Tennessee, so he's going to stay in Los Angeles, work on whatever injury he's got there. It's going to be the Joshua Kelly show. He's going to be super popular in DFS. That's one of those situations where certainly he's going to have a large, especially in cash. He's probably going to be 80% owned, maybe more in cash. Certainly a fine play there, but getting into the tournaments, you need to get a little bit different. I would expect his rate in some of these tournaments to push upwards of 30 to 45%. At that point, even though he had a very solid week 1, it looks like he's going to have a very solid week 2 in terms of volume, and volume is king. That Tennessee defense, if they do stop him, and especially if the Chargers are struggling to move the ball in the air and this run game is getting shut down, you could see this one turn real ugly for Joshua Kelly. Despite the volume, you might see him really, maybe 20 carries, 55 yards, no touchdowns, and then you're wondering, geez, man, he got the volume, but he really didn't do much besides that. The one good caveat here is if the Chargers are under pressure, no Austin Eckler, that's probably a big part of their game plan, is making sure those running backs are running the routes. I wouldn't see a huge difference in terms of Joshua Kelly in there. It might be the backup there, which is a healthy scratch last week. In week 1, we really saw him more as a pass catcher coming out of Notre Dame, but that's Isaiah Spiller. Kyron Williams was out of Notre Dame. Isaiah Spiller was with Devon A-Chain there, but it could be where Spiller's out there to run the pass game. Kelly maybe more of the run attack, but if the Chargers are getting kind of blown up on the offensive line there in their pass protection, you could see a little bit more targets to Gerald Everett. You could see some more targets there to the running backs, which could be good for Joshua Kelly or Isaiah Spiller. Either way, if Joshua Kelly's going to be super high owned or super high rostered in this particular tournament setting, because Austin Eckler is out, that could be a very good fade this particular week. Just saying, hey, so many people are going to have it. This does look like, on paper, the average fan's going to say, hey, the Chargers are really good. Tennessee's a poor team. They're going to blow them out of the water. There's going to be a lot of scoring opportunities for Joshua Kelly as they're, leading this game and just kind of running the show there. I think that's the wrong mindset, but I think Joshua Kelly is going to be a good fade in those DFS tournaments this week. I don't know if he's going to bury you. I don't know if he's got that type of talent to bury you. So especially if Tennessee is shutting him down, I think he's going to be on my fades list if he's going to be super popular, which he should be if Austin Eckler is not going to be there. Getting to the Tennessee side, it gets a little bit interesting. They're number 8 in offensive pass protection. The Chargers 30th in the defensive pass rush. That's suggesting Tennessee should have plenty of time to throw the ball, which is good for Tennessee's pass game. Tannehill did not look very good in week 1, but this could be in their favor if they get a lot of time. It does sound like DeAndre Hopkins dealing with an ankle injury. He's been limited or not at practice this entire week, so monitor that. If he is out there, I would feel comfortable with him going out there and having a good game. If he's not out there, Treylon Burks and Chig Okonkwo are probably the biggest beneficiaries there, and I would expect both of them probably to see in between like 6 to 10 targets in this particular matchup. and be fine. Getting over to the run blocking side, we got Tennessee number 11, the Chargers 20th at stopping the run, and then the DVOA for Tennessee number 7, Chargers 29th. I actually think this is going to be how Tennessee moves the ball in this particular matchup. It's going to be on the ground. It looks like they're going to be a little bit more successful running it that way. They do have the pass game that's going to be a little bit more effective. And because of this, getting that purge out there again. Let's sound the alarm for that upset alert. Could be Tennessee here. Takes it at home against the Chargers. It is a 2.5-point line, but it looks like Tennessee here going to be a little bit more effective on offense based off of this report. Chargers look like they're going to struggle a little bit more. Don't be shocked if you see Tennessee pull this one out. More of a Derrick Henry game, and really that might be an excellent pivot off of the Josh Kelly huge rostership percentage in the tournaments. It is just pivot to Derrick Henry on some of those lineups and watch him run all over the Chargers for 160 yards, 2 touchdowns, and reap those benefits. Make it rain, right? Anyway, number 5 on the slate. Let's get to number 6, which is San Francisco at the Los Angeles Rams. 45-point Vegas game total, 6th best on the slate. San Francisco, 7.5-point road favorites. They come in with a 26.25 team implied total, which is 3rd best on the slate. The Rams, 18.75 team implied total, 21st on the main slate. Getting into the San Francisco side, number 20 in offensive pass protection, below average there. Los Angeles defensive pass rush, number 1. This is suggesting that San Francisco should be under pressure in this particular matchup. LA certainly has Aaron Donald there, but they were playing Seattle last week. We did see Seattle's offensive line be really poor. I don't know if San Francisco's offensive line is on that level. So even though this is a 120 matchup, again, that variance in week 1 could be the reality here, creating this huge gap. But either way, this is suggesting that Los Angeles should be able to get after Brock Purdy there. San Francisco probably going to need a quicker passes there. So somebody like Brandon Ayuk, who had a blow up last week, he's more of the deep threat. Deebo Samuel and Christian McCaffrey and George Kittle are more of the underneath players that benefit a lot more when San Francisco is under pressure. They get those pass attempts there. Getting into the San Francisco run blocking, number 9 versus the Rams 31 run stopping. And then DVOA for San Francisco, number 8 versus Los Angeles 22. Indicative that San Francisco should be able to run the ball very effectively. If they're not passing the ball very effectively or they're really struggling in that department, don't be surprised to see San Francisco trot out McCaffrey and Elijah Moore over there, or Elijah Mitchell, and kind of run it down Los Angeles' throat as a very successful option in their run game. So really, if I'm attacking this San Francisco game and you're expecting them to score some points against the Rams, McCaffrey would probably be my favorite option here. And then if they're running the ball, Kittle's probably going to be in there blocking and going to lead to potentially some opportunities where they're going to fake a run and then have him, get loose down a seam to score a touchdown, something like that. So those are probably my 2 favorite plays from San Francisco. I'd be probably fading Brock Purdy in this, especially if he's going to be under pressure. Could see Los Angeles get after him there. On the Rams side for offense, 18th in pass protection, San Francisco number 10. The Rams pass DVOA number 2, the Rams 7. Rams defense is green across the board there, so I wouldn't expect the Rams to be able to move the ball very effectively here. This is indicative that they'll be under pressure. We still won't have Cooper Kupp. Puka Nacua certainly looked like he had a good week 1. Whether that remains to be seen for week 2. Tutu Atwell is the big burner. Catches long balls. This is the guy that I would fade completely this week. Even though he had that nice week 1, this is suggesting that San Francisco is going to be getting after the quarterback. I don't think Stafford's going to have time to throw those nice balls to Tutu Atwell, it's going to be more underneath. It's going to be Tyler Higbee. It's going to be the running backs, and it's probably going to be Puka Nacua closer to the line of scrimmage in this particular pass game. In the run game, Los Angeles 28, San Francisco number 5. I would expect Los Angeles' run game woes to continue. Cam Akers and Kyron Williams probably off the board. I know Kyron Williams is a big pickup this week. He could see some benefit to the big pressure rates. I think he was a very good pass catcher coming out of college. We could see a lot of dump offs from Matt Stafford to him in this particular matchup. But really probably fading both of those. Big time fade on Cam Akers, especially with the usage that we saw in week 1. I think he's really going to struggle in week 2 here for my 2 cents on this game. I would say San Francisco with the run game there, probably going to be just fine. The Rams going to be under duress and struggle to move the ball. I do like San Francisco's opportunities to put up some defensive points in this matchup. Let's get into the number 7 game on the slate. Some pretty ugly teams here. Chicago, Tampa Bay. We got the Justin Fields, Baker Mayfield matchup. So getting into this is a big drop now. So 40.5 point game total, 7th best actually on the slate here. Chicago at Tampa Bay. Tampa Bay 2.5 point home favorites. They actually lost a 0.5 point there compared to what they normally see for the home game team. Getting into the Chicago side, they're number 22 in offensive pass protection. Tampa Bay number 6 in the pass rush. DVOA is pretty close there. Chicago 23, Tampa Bay 20. Suggestive here that Tampa Bay should be able to get after the quarterback. Tampa Bay's defense certainly in play here. We know Justin Fields takes lots of sacks, so I would expect that to continue based off of this particular matchup info. Keep that in mind. He's probably not going to have a ton of time to pass the ball. He's going to be holding on to it. We did see a lot of targets to Roschon Johnson last week based off of the fact that, I don't know, Chicago just seems inept. If you go to the quarterback school, look at JT O'Sullivan, all the offensive play designs just seem like they are straight trash. This is coming from the LaFleur coaching tree, which had Nathaniel Hackett in Denver last year. It just seems like it's a train wreck disaster of an offense. I'm not sure how much of it's Justin Fields and how much of it's the offensive play designs, but it looks really bad. Maybe we see a similar situation where the running backs are getting a lot of targets in this particular matchup, and really nobody else is going to do anything here. Getting into the run blocking, it looks like the better of the two aspects. Number 25 for Chicago, 21 for Tampa Bay. Again, it's not great, but it does seem like the better of the two ways to move the ball for Chicago. The thing with Fields being under pressure, he could certainly scramble, rip off some runs, just similar to Lamar Jackson's thing that I had stated earlier. But I don't think Chicago is going to be super effective in this. Low-scoring affair. Expect that to continue. Tampa Bay, 23rd in offensive pass protection. Chicago, 25th in the pass rush. Kind of an even matchup there. Don't expect Tampa Bay to be under a lot of pressure. But they shouldn't also have like an amazing amount of time either, but probably more than they're going to be, more time than they're going to be used to for most of the season if that trend continues. Godwin and Evans are probably the only two people that you want to target in the Tampa Bay game. Getting in the run blocking side, Tampa Bay, surprisingly, they're at number 6 in offensive run blocking, despite the inefficiencies that we saw from Rachaad White and Sean Tucker last week. Kind of interesting, but that's just how it works out. Chicago, number 9 in stopping the run. Again, pretty even matchup here for Tampa Bay. Studs are going to eat in this, so I think that's going to be more of the Godwin and Evans route this week. Don't necessarily expect Rachaad White and Sean Tucker to be these studs that are going out and ripping off huge games. But based off of this, I think Tampa Bay, 2.5 point home favorites should be plenty fine there. They look like the team that's probably going to move the ball via less struggle. Chicago looks like they might struggle a little bit more on offense there, but not a lot of people that I'm interested in playing in DFS, and certainly be cautious of them in your lineup for your seasonal leagues. All right, getting into the 8th game, Green Bay at Atlanta. Let's see if this has any fantasy goodness in it. It is the 8th best on the slate. We're already at 40, and Atlanta there at 1.5 point home favorites. 20.75 team implied total. Green Bay 19.25. Atlanta 15th best. Green Bay 18th best team score there on the week for the main slate. Green Bay offensive pass protection number 8. Atlanta 30th in the pass rush. DVOA for Green Bay 3rd. Atlanta 4th in the pass DVOAs. This is indicative. Green Bay should have plenty of time to pass the ball. It's in the dome. Should be pretty smooth sailing for Green Bay in the pass game there. I would expect Luke Musgrave and Jaden Reed to have pretty solid weeks this week. We did see Romeo Doubs with 2 touchdowns last week. Will that continue? I don't know. I don't think he's like a super great talent, but he certainly has put up numbers in week 1. This is indicative. Green Bay should have plenty of time to throw the ball in week 2, so that trend could continue. Offensive run blocking for Green Bay, 24th. Atlanta, 8th in stopping the run. This is saying Green Bay might struggle to run the ball a little bit. Aaron Jones dealing with a little bit of an ankle injury, I believe, this whole week. Will he be limited in this particular game? Will they run A.J. Dillon? I don't know. But it sounds like the run blocking there might not be super great for Green Bay in this particular matchup versus Atlanta. So Green Bay probably going to be passing the ball. Jordan Love maybe sneakily good as a DFS option in this week. Pair him with Luke Musgrave or Jaden Reed or Romeo Doubs. It sounds like Christian Watson will be out again this week. But interesting there for Green Bay. Getting into the Atlanta side, 22nd in the pass protection, Green Bay 11th. Pretty big negative aspect there for Atlanta. They're probably going to be under pressure. They don't run or they don't pass the ball very much anyway, but there's a big fade for me on Drake London. It's going to be a fade for me on Kyle Pitts, especially I don't think they're going to get any downfield targets if Green Bay is getting after them. The DVOA is just as bad, number 10 versus number 29 for Atlanta's offense. Run stopping, Green Bay number 8, and Atlanta 27th in run blocking. Looks like Atlanta's going to struggle to run the ball as well. I know Arthur Smith usually does a pretty good job there, but it looks like on paper that Atlanta's really going to struggle. Excuse me. Atlanta's really going to struggle to move the ball just in general. I know they are 1.5 point favorites here, but I'm going to go ahead, hit the purchase there, and I think this is another upset alert. I think Green Bay comes into Atlanta and actually takes this game via the pass game. So don't be surprised if you see Green Bay come in there, air it out, and then Atlanta kind of struggle to move the ball on offense. That's looking how it's going to shape out to be. Green Bay kicker might be a very good option in this particular matchup, especially if Green Bay is struggling to move the ball on the ground, not punching it in, anything like that. Jordan Love, not super experienced, maybe not so great in the red zone. Wouldn't be shocked to see this Green Bay kicker, believe he's a rookie, come out there and kick 3 or 4 field goals in this particular game. So if you're in the Scott Fish Bowl like this, look into that Green Bay kicker this week. Always against drafting kickers in that particular league. And I think this is why. You can stream somebody like this Green Bay kicker this week and do well. Number 9 slate. On the slate, we have 2 games. Indianapolis at Houston. New York Giants at Arizona. We're going to get into the Indianapolis-Houston game first. A couple of really bad teams from last year. A couple of maybe up-and-comers here with the new rookie quarterbacks in town. So ninth best game total on the slate, 39.5 as of Saturday morning. Pretty even here. 1 point home favorites for Houston, 20.25. Indianapolis, 19.25 team implied totals. Houston, 16th best team rank on the week or in the main slate. Indianapolis, number 18. Getting into the offensive pass protection for Indianapolis, number 21. Houston, 24th at getting after the quarterback. Pretty even matchup there. What that usually means is that studs eat. So this is probably a Michael Pittman week, especially when you start looking at that offensive run blocking. Indianapolis, 32. Houston, 16th at stopping the run. Kind of middle of the pack, but Indianapolis, number 32 on the run blocking side. I'd expect their movement of the ball to be more in the air and probably via Anthony Richardson's legs. But if they're going to be having a standard amount of time to pass the ball, I do like Michael Pittman in this particular matchup just as they run a lot of RPOs. And he's going to be the number one read on those RPOs where they only have one, maybe two reads on those. And if they're not there, Anthony Richardson just takes off. So keep that in mind. I think that's how Indianapolis is going to go. It's going to be Anthony Richardson, Michael Pittman show, and pretty much no one else. Getting into the Houston side, they're number one in offensive pass protection. We did have C.J. Stroud pop up on the injury report on Friday. I don't think it's anything serious, but something to monitor as we get closer to Sunday. But they are number one in offensive pass protection. Indianapolis, 19th in the defensive pass rush. So they should have plenty of time to throw the ball there in Houston. I think Nico Collins is a very good play based off of this information, especially in DFS. Could be one of those guys that just comes out of nowhere, really low rostered and does really well for you. So it could be one of those guys that, put him in as the last option, and he's gonna, certainly 3 to 4x his price range. So keep that in mind. Houston's run blocking, number 7. Indianapolis, number 4 at stopping the run. Pretty even here. Wouldn't expect Houston to be tremendously effective running the ball, but they should be just fine moving the ball. It looks like the pass game is where it's at. Combined with Indianapolis's struggle to run the ball, I do see this being probably pretty close, but Houston pass game, Indy pass game, probably the options that you're going to want to attack in this and avoid the run games for either team. That would be the route that I'm heading in DFS, and I do like Nico Collins this week as a dart throw. Getting in to the other number 9 game on the slate, that's the Giants at Arizona. So we have New York Giants going into Arizona, 4-point road favorites, 21.75 team implied total for the Giants. That's 9th best on the main slate. Arizona, 17.75 team implied total, 22nd best on the slate. Game total 39.5, again tied for 9th best on the slate. Getting into the New York Giants pass protection, number 31. Arizona 18th in the pass rush. Giants not very good at pass protection. They did play Dallas, so it's probably skewing some of the data here in terms of their adjusted sack rate. They were just getting blown up. Arizona doesn't have that ability, so I would say this is probably more of an even matchup. This is one of those where it's like a week 1 variance problem, but this is suggesting, though, New York Giants probably not going to have like a ton of time to sit back there and pass the ball. Probably good for Darren Waller and a lot of these wide receivers that they have there that are really just slot receivers for the most part. The interesting part comes when you look at the run blocking. Number 7 for the Giants, number 30 for the Cardinals. I do think this could be a situation where Saquon Barkley just has a massive workload, ripping off 5-6 yards per carry in this particular matchup. Maybe breaks off a long one or two. He would be the one person that I'm targeting outside of Darren Waller in this particular matchup. If you think the Arizona Cardinals are truly going to be getting after the Giants, there's going to be no one open, and the Giants are going to be in passing situations. Might be something where you want to push the button on Daniel Jones to have a pretty solid run game this week, but really it's probably Darren Waller and more so just the Saquon Barkley show for the Giants this week over there in the desert. Getting into the Arizona side, they're number 4 in offensive pass protection. The Giants 31st in the defensive pass rush. Suggestive that Arizona should have plenty of time to throw the ball in this particular matchup. Who's that going to benefit? It's going to be probably Michael Wilson. I'm not entirely sure who they have running deep routes. Rondale Moore is certainly plenty fast, but they seem to keep him closer to the line of scrimmage. Not sure what Michael Wilson does for them. I didn't see kind of what his ADOT was, but he's probably going to be a big beneficiary in week 2 for all of this. Marquise Brown, forgot about him. He would be the big beneficiary of this if Arizona can pass protect Marquise Brown. You could see having quite a few deeper targets come his way and be successful. The run blocking, pretty even there. Arizona 18th. Giants defense 22nd. Don't expect anything amazing there. They do still like to run the ball despite the changeover in the coaching. But if I'm doing Arizona, it's going to be Marquise Brown. If I'm looking at, and maybe Michael Wilson as a dart throw, and the Giants, it's mostly Saquon Barkley. You can probably trot out Waller, but I wouldn't expect a huge ceiling game from him in this particular matchup. Getting into the next one, which is the 11th best on the slate, we have 2 games actually tied for 11th best, which is this one, the New York Jets at Dallas. 38.5 point Vegas game total, and then Washington at Denver. These are the last 2 on the main slate. Dallas, 9-point home favorites here, 23.75 team implied total. That is 7th best on the slate. Jets at 14.75. They are the 24th best on the main slate. I think that is the worst. Again, Vegas game total 38.5. Getting into the Jets side, offensive pass protection number 27. Dallas second overall. DVOA even with that. Number 1 DVOA for Dallas, 24th for the Jets pass game. Definitely expect Zach Wilson to be under pressure. It's probably going to be a massive turnover game for him. Don't be surprised if you see Dallas with another monstrous 20 to 30 point defensive output in fantasy here. The run blocking for the Jets is 19th. Dallas 11th at stopping the run. Probably the better of the 2 matchups for the Jets is just to run the ball. It doesn't look like they're going to be very effective at that. I do agree with this 14-point Jets line. I would be surprised to see them even get to that with the way Dallas is looking here. Getting into Dallas's offense, number 2 in the pass protection. The Jets, number 7 in the defensive pass rush. Pretty even up here. Usually when that's the case, the studs eat. In this particular scenario, I think we see CeeDee Lamb with a monstrous game here. I think Brandon Cooks can also have a pretty solid matchup. Based off of this matchup, he could have a pretty solid week. Outside of that, I think it's really just the CeeDee Lamb show. If you think the Jets are really going to put the pass rush on to Dallas, you could get Jake Ferguson into some of your lineups. He could see some additional targets based off of this information. The run blocking for Dallas, 26th. The Jets, 10th. This is highly suggestive that the Jets are going to be pretty good against Dallas's run game. Going to be somewhat fading the ceiling of Tony Pollard in this matchup, unless you think the Jets are going to be getting after Dallas and then he's going to catch some more dump-offs there. But a ceiling game probably not going to come from Pollard. I do see this being a very low-scoring affair. Jets, obviously, I don't think can move the ball. Dallas is probably going to struggle running it, and then the offense probably going to move through the air, which is a little bit more effective way to move the ball, but they could be having some pressure concerns as well with that particular 2-7 matchup. So I just think this is going to be a low-scoring game overall. Wouldn't be surprised to see the Jets somewhere in that 7-14 range, kind of similar to what this is suggesting. Based off of that, Dallas is at a 24-point team implied total. I wouldn't be shocked to see them score another touchdown or maybe 2 on defense here, and that be how they score a lot of their points. If they're up and not able to run the ball, it might be just a big punt fest in this particular matchup. I don't like this in terms of playing it for any sort of DFS slate. I just think it's going to be an ugly, gross game. I think the best option in this entire thing is the Dallas defense, and then maybe CeeDee Lamb. Getting into the last one of the main slate is Washington going into Denver. Denver 3.5-point home favorites there. Again, that 38.5 Vegas game total, dead last on the slate, tied with the last matchup. Denver 21-point team implied total, 14th best. Washington, 17.5 point team implied total, 23rd best in this week, or this main slate this week. Washington's pass protection, number 29. Denver is number 13. Probably going to be a struggle for Denver to move the ball. A struggle for Washington to move the ball through the air. Not going to have as much time. They're going to need those quicker passes. That could be some more dump offs to the running backs. And Jahan Dotson, I think, can get some of those lower A-dot targets. McLaurin definitely good at getting open. They got plenty of weapons that can get open. Curtis Samuel could see some additional targets. They do have a pretty decent amount of receivers there that can, do it all. So whether or not that pass protection, probably just not going to be how they move the ball, but it's going to shuffle those targets a little bit lower of an A-dot. Getting into the run blocking side, Washington 15, Denver number 2. This is suggesting that Washington might not be able to run the ball very effectively. Brian Robinson hasn't been very efficient as a runner anyway. I do expect Washington to struggle moving the ball just in general based off of this. Denver would probably be a pretty solid defense here to pick up. I don't see them giving up a whole lot of points, and if they're getting after the quarterback, there could be a situation where they're finding themselves into multiple turnovers, opportunities to score on defense or punt returns, things like that. Denver side, offensive pass protection 28, defensive pass rush 15. Denver should also be under pressure here for Russell Wilson. That should lead to those quicker passes. Tight ends, Jerry Jeudy should be back here. You could see him with a massive target load in this particular matchup. Marvin Mims, we didn't see do very well last week. He's more of a deep threat. I would avoid him for multiple reasons. Getting into the run blocking side, Denver 15, Washington number 3 at stopping the run. This is looking very gross for both sides in terms of the offensive output. 38.5. I wouldn't be surprised to see this not even make it there. I'd be not shocked at all if it was less than 30, like a 10-13 matchup here. Just an ugly, gross game. Not going to want anybody but maybe the defenses in this particular matchup for your DFS lineups. And that's going to do it for the main slate, folks. Let's get ourselves into the island games here. Running a little late on this first attempt in 2023. Apologize for that, but let's get into New England here. Miami, Sunday Night Football. We do see Miami coming into the Patriots Stadium as 2.5 point favorites as of Saturday morning. 46.5 Vegas game total. 24.5 team implied total for Miami. 22 team implied total for New England. Getting into the Miami pass protection, they are number 3. Unfortunately for them, New England number 9 in the defensive pass rush. Pretty even there, a little bit in the favor of Miami. But really, this is a situation where your studs are going to eat. So when it's those normal even matchups, the talent typically wins out, which means, if you have a stud in there, they're going to do very well. We know Tyreek Hill's a stud. Probably going to go that route. Jalen Waddle in his own right seems like he's very good. He should also be in play here. Getting into the run blocking, Miami 13, New England 17. Again, pretty even here. Slight favor of Miami, but pretty even. Studs eat. Unfortunately for Miami, it doesn't seem like they have any studs. I don't know how they're going to run block very well, but I would expect them to try to move the ball via the air. Bill Belichick, very good at scheming. So even though this is suggesting pass protection, stud's going to eat, Tyreek Hill type of game, we should kind of take some caution with that. That's the route I would go with Miami, especially for this island game. He's going to be super popular, but if you want to fade Tyreek Hill because he is going to be super popular, Waddle would probably be a good pivot off of that. But yeah, I don't know. It should be interesting there as an island game. Getting into the New England offensive side, number 16 in the pass protection. Miami, number 5 in the pass rush. Should be getting after New England here pretty well, which is going to lead to some quicker passes needed from New England. I think they could ultimately decide to pass to Hunter Henry and the running backs in this particular matchup. The New England Patriots pass game is pretty inept at the wide receiver position, so I would expect Hunter Henry and these running backs, especially if Mac Jones is under pressure, to get a lot more run in this particular game. Run stopping for Miami, number 32. New England, 19 in run blocking. This is suggestive that New England should be able to run the ball. If you want to keep Miami's offense off of the field, this is a good way to do it. So, island game, I would not be shocked to see if both Zeke and Ramondre Stevenson, especially with the opportunity for enhanced pass attempts coming their way, to have a very good game, running it back with either Waddle or Tyreek Hill, and maybe Miami defense getting after New England there and getting some additional sacks. And then a kicker. I think that's going to be how you're going to want to attack this game. 2 running backs from New England, a wide receiver from Miami, maybe Miami's defense, and then one of these kickers who could potentially be kicking a lot of field goals in this matchup. Getting on to the Monday night slates, we have 2 games here. We have New Orleans at Carolina, and then we also have Cleveland at Pittsburgh. They are starting, I think, like an hour apart or an hour and a half apart, which is a little confusing why they do that in week 2 always. But New Orleans at Carolina, we do have New Orleans as 3-point road favorites. It's the best one of the Monday night games at 39.5 game total there for Vegas. New Orleans 21.25 is the best one on the Monday night slate. Carolina 18.25 team implied total, third best out of the 4 teams playing on Monday night. New Orleans offensive pass protection number 25, Carolina number 11, suggesting that Carolina should be able to get after Derek Carr. Probably going to need a little bit more underneath passes in this particular matchup. I would probably say avoid Rashid Shaheed in this one. I don't think he's going to be very good. We do also see Olave with some pretty high depth of target, but he can operate underneath or more of a mid-range as well. And we have Michael Thomas there yet, and some tight ends, Juwan Johnson, Taysom Hill. I don't think the Saints are going to have a ton of time to pass the ball. I would expect maybe Olave to have a decent game, and then a lot of Michael Thomas targets going his way in this particular matchup. The run blocking is also ugly for New Orleans. They don't really have anybody. Jamal Williams, Carolina should stop them pretty good there. Number 6 on defense, Saints number 22. It's going to look like an ugly game on offense there for New Orleans going into Carolina based off of this. But I think Olave and Thomas would be the route that I'd want to go in terms of the Saints island matchup. Carolina, number 3 in offensive pass protection. The Saints, number 17 in the defensive pass rush. Suggestive that Carolina should have some time to pass the ball, which is going to be good for their number 1 overall draft pick rookie there. And really it looks like with the run stopping there from the Saints being number 30, but Carolina's run blocking at 25th. Carolina should be okay in the run game, but they should be a little bit more effective or have some time there for Bryce Young in the pass game at number 3 versus 17 in that pass rush. And really, I know we've been using it a lot, but I'm going to go ahead. Upset alert here. I think Carolina keeps us close. I think their defense is good enough that they're going to, put the clamps on the Saints here. And then I think it looks like their matchup is a little bit better on offense. I think Carolina can certainly move the ball via the pass game. They don't have a ton of weapons there necessarily, but I think that's going to be their bread and butter in this particular matchup. And they shouldn't be too bad on the ground there with Chuba Hubbard and Miles Sanders. I think they should be good, not great in that department this particular week. So I think Carolina moves the ball a little bit better than the Saints in this one. I think Carolina can take this. I would maybe bet the under, maybe like a Carolina 17, Saints 13 type of situation in this matchup. And getting into the worst Vegas game total of the entire week, and certainly the worst one on Monday Night Football. Cleveland going into Pittsburgh as 2.5-point Vegas favorites as of Saturday morning. Cleveland 20.5 team implied total, second best one on the Monday night slate. Pittsburgh 18 team implied total, the worst one on the slate, and the second highest one on Monday Night Football for the game total. Offensive pass protection for Cleveland, number 19, Pittsburgh 23. That's an even up matchup. That kind of means your studs should do well, or the people who are just good at football will do a little bit better. I think Amari Cooper and Elijah Moore are both very good at football, so that should be good for them in this particular matchup. Probably fading the Donovan Peoples-Jones side on this, or David Njoku on this. The run blocking looks a little bit better for Cleveland. Number 12, Pittsburgh 28th at stopping the run. Pittsburgh's actually red across the board there at stopping anything on the defensive side, so I'd expect Cleveland to have a pretty solid matchup here and be a little bit more effective in general running the ball than they will be passing the ball. It's going to be a good game for Nick Chubb, I think, in this particular scenario where that's the biggest beneficiary for their offense is being able to run the ball. They should get plenty of scoring opportunities if they're running it like this, and then the pass protection's a slight win, but even. I would expect quite a few touchdowns to be scored in this and not necessarily have an issue with kicking a bunch of field goals. So if Cleveland should score 3 or 4 times in this on offense. Getting into the Pittsburgh side, 18 points isn't very good, but they're 13th in offensive pass protection. Cleveland 21st at getting after the quarterback, despite being pretty good against Cincinnati in that game last week. Pass DVOA for Cleveland is number 2 there because they got so many sacks. Pittsburgh's pass DVOA 28. But yeah, kind of interesting there. I think Cleveland and Pittsburgh is probably a closer matchup than that's suggesting on the pass protection side. I'd expect them maybe to need to get the ball out a little bit quicker, which might be a little bit difficult. It sounds like we got Deontay Johnson out for a while with the hamstring injury, leaving pretty much just George Pickens, the rookie from last year, Calvin Austin, kind of a burner guy. I wouldn't expect him to have a very good game, and then maybe Pat Freiermuth getting a little bit more. I'd expect Pittsburgh maybe to be dumping the ball off underneath to tight end running backs in this matchup. The run blocking is pretty poor for Pittsburgh. 24, Cleveland 13 at stopping the run. DVOA even worse, Pittsburgh 26, Cleveland 8. So I don't expect Pittsburgh to be able to move the ball very well in this. It's an island game matchup. If you don't have to play anybody from Pittsburgh and you can get in on a 2-game slate, you're probably avoiding anyone from Pittsburgh. And then Cleveland, I think you can go after the usual suspects there. I think you're going to be just fine in terms of quarterbacks. I think Deshaun Watson is going to be your best bet this Monday night slate versus Tua, who could see potentially some struggles against Bill Belichick. But those are going to be your 2 quarterback options. And then Elijah Moore and Amari Cooper and Nick Chubb on the Cleveland side. If you have to pick somebody from Pittsburgh, I'm not sure who you want it to be. Maybe their kicker. Maybe Pat Freiermuth or the backup running back there, Jaylen Warren, getting some pass dump-offs in the pass game, especially if they're getting blown out. He could see a little bit more run there in the pass game and just get a bunch of garbage time receptions. Anyway, that's going to do it for week 2, folks. Hopefully you enjoyed everything. Glad I could get this information to you. Some of the information's missing, like the game time stuff, but we were in a pickle this week. I'm just glad that the information came in and we could get you an adjusted line play report for week 2. Can certainly expect those moving forward every single week. Saturday morning, going to be recording a lot of these shows, depending on what my schedule looks like. But certainly appreciate the watch. Thanks for hanging in all of this time. Hit that subscribe button on YouTube if you can, and go over to Twitter, subscribe at Todzilla1337 and at Zilla Fantasy. Thanks for watching, folks. Let's go win some money together. Bye.